All right, everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of the Inspiration Accelerator. I am here tonight with an amazing human. I'm here with Bob Carter. I want to tell you a little bit about Bob, and then we're going to get to him. He's held a bunch of different roles in both the corporate and nonprofit spaces. He's an executive. He's been a CEO. He is actually, interestingly, I just found this out, a former Division One two-time national champion in lacrosse at Johns Hopkins, which is super cool. He's a dad. He's a granddad. He supports these days nonprofit organizations and raises funds for them in the philanthropic space. He's also has 26 years sober and is going for 27 this July. Bob Carter, thank you so much. Welcome to the Inspiration Accelerator. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, Bob, we've got to start. I don't know why I want to start here, but I'm fascinated by this. Division One lacrosse national champion. We're offense, midfield, defense. Tell us what you played, and did you enjoy? Did you get knocked around, or did you do most of the knocking around for
I
folks?
did well. I was a midfielder, and I was a face-off in the
Okay,
center circle guy. And yeah, you have to be able to deal it out, and you have to take it along with that. And back in those days, they didn't have this. They have a circle now protecting the centers, so nobody can go in and blow you out. But I was in the day when they could go in and blow you out, and
really.
played against you know Syracuse, Army, Navy, Virginia, a lot of big guys in Division One. And I wasn't tiny, but I was 5'10". And they always put the monsters out there to face off the 6'4", 6'7" guys that would try to push you around. But I was pretty sturdy, so so in my last year there, I got 80% of my face off, so that was a good deal.
Well,
But
I
it
imagine
was
so.
a great game. It was a lot of fun.
If you all won multiple national championships, I imagine, and you were running lead on the faceoffs. So I imagine there was quite a bit of success there. But
Yeah.
talk to me about, because I'm fascinated by the connection between sports and business, and you've had quite a bit of success in business, and we're going to get to that momentarily. But do you see parallels between sports and business? And do you ever feel like being as successful as you were, at lacrosse helped you when you got into
There,
the world of business?
there's no question that it did. That there are lots of books written about the lessons I learned on the field was all I needed to know. And
Yeah,
the field is a great place because uh, and there are different fields that you play on. But I played team sports um, from the time I was very young until I got out of college. And the learning of depending on other people, of holding your position but yielding the position to others. Uh, Teamwork, dependence on each other, and we played for each other. Um, we loved our coach, but we really played for each other, um, and we talked about that, and everybody encouraged everybody else to be successful. And one of the huge learnings is nobody ever does it alone. Um, we had 10 guys on the field and another 20 on the bench who could have stepped in and did just fine.
mm,
Uh, when you're at that level, I mean, you don't have any bad players on your team. Uh, Sometimes it was just back then, it was a matter of age and experience and
right.
occasionally size. But no, and in business, I look around and my success was direct result of the teams I put together. The people who surrounded me with things that I wasn't really good at. Um, I was just mentoring somebody today, and I do that quite a bit in this business. And they were worried about taking a different job, and I said, just remember, my career has been reasonably successful, but I've never accepted a job I was fully qualified for.
Right.
And I figured I was bright enough to figure it out. And then I said I could always surround myself with people who contributed in other ways.
Mm,
And that's what the team is. We had some people who were good at face off. We had people who were good at scoring goals. I was good at getting the ball, wasn't the best at scoring. And we had defensive players. We had great goalies who could stop the ball. But that was a big learning all throughout my sports career in high school and college. Learn to trust other people and and trust that they'll do their job if you do yours. Uh, so that's the way my company's. Right now, this company that I created when I was 65, and warning, I'll be 78 in a couple of weeks. Um, but its
The
success,
early birthday.
it's a direct result though of the people I put together. I happen to be sitting kind of at the center of it, but it's really these teams that I was able to put together, and they're the pathway to success, putting together good teams.
I'll never forget being on the hiring committee for a K-12 school a few years ago. I won't mention the city because it might give it away. And they had a choice between two people for a pretty high up role. One who was immensely qualified, who'd sat in that seat before, and who was going to bring a wealth of experience, and one who was brand new, significantly less qualified. Good person, smart, but nowhere near the quality of the other person. And they chose the lesser qualified person, and their rationale was, um, in no uncertain terms, the person who knows more is going to put a lot of pressure on us to be at their level, and we are not up for that. And so we are going to pick the person who we can kind of tell them, here's how things go here. I remember being so incredibly disappointed,
I
and not because the person they chose was a bad human. And as I said, just the opposite, but it was such I'm going to use this word intentionally. It was such a cowardly move to me that they chose playing small. They chose ultimately worse results for everybody involved because they were worried about how hiring somebody at the higher level, how it would reflect on them, the pressures it would put on them to be great. It was so disappointing, and of course, it didn't work out. Have you seen folks make decisions based on ego and
Oh, sure.
insecurity in
Yeah.
those ways? Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen senior management. I've seen CEOs make the terrible mistake of surrounding themselves with people that they could push around, and
yeah,
and who were yes people,
yeah,
the sycophants of the world. And if you're not willing to put together a challenging team, you'll never be challenged, nor will you be as successful as you might be. It's a comfort zone. Uh,
yeah.
and that faculty or whoever, that committee, whoever they were of senior management, they had a comfort thing going on, and they didn't want to mess with that, which is not has nothing to do with the mission of the school.
Right.
So
Yeah,
they used the wrong criteria for the decision all the way around, in my view.
yeah.
So
That's right. That's right. It's in some ways it's a metaphor for life too. As somebody, I didn't coin this, but somebody told me not that long ago, like, be nervous if you're no longer nervous when you're stepping into a new space, or you're making a speech, or you're doing an interview, or whatever it is. And to your point about not ever having been fully qualified for a job you had, that brings some nerves with it, but
does.
that's
It does because you do that, and you got to have a little courage to do that.
yeah,
Some people say you're crazy, but that's good anxiety, in my view, because it brings on the urgency to do well and to make the right hires and to advance the program, in a sense, to prove that you could do it, not only to yourself, but to everyone else. Um,
yeah,
so I don't mind, and this goes to sports too. And just a word about that. When we would play at home at Homewood Field, probably a famous thing for lacrosse, very, very historical field.
okay,
Before the game, um, we would get very quiet. There was no noise. There was no anything. And silently, you had 30 young men walking around or lying down or sitting in front of their lockers with their heads in their hands, contemplating the game.
Mm.
Um, some of it was anxiety. The other thing was building confidence that we were prepared and understanding. We were the best prepared team. And that day, we were probably the best coached and prepared team in the country. We
Mm.
never felt like we would ever lose, just never walking out of that room. We erupted out of the locker room when they would fire a cannon off. And we always did a lap halfway around the field just to, we'd already warmed up, but we would take that. I was so out of breath, Michael, during those laps because my anxieties were popping up.
Right.
And
Right.
I was so excited that, you could feel your heart racing, and they did the national anthem. You're standing out in the middle of the field. And I was thinking, maybe I didn't train hard enough. I'm out of breath already and I haven't started.
Right.
But it was the good adrenaline pumping
Yeah.
everything to get you going. So
That's so
when
cool.
you accept one of those jobs and you're taking a chance on yourself, you get that adrenaline going. And the results of good adrenaline are not stress, they're execution. And that's, another lesson that I picked up uh, in the on lacrosse field, a couple other fields too. But I had a very severe leg injury when I was a sophomore, and it changed my game. That's one of the reasons why I became a specialist with faceoffs. Uh, they didn't have the technology to take care of knees then the way they do now.
Yeah.
And so I was an all-state lacrosse player in high school, and they didn't have all Americans, but our team was ranked number one unofficially in high school in the country. Um, I had to make an adjustment to not quite being physically the specimen I had been before, and I almost quit the team. Uh, but I had a very competitive and athletic family. My dad, and my grandfather. My grandfather was a boxer, and you just didn't quit. So the beauty of that moment was I found this niche. I had really good upper body strength. I worked on that harder off season, and got my arms where they belong, my shoulders and everything, because it's a lot of upper body. And I ended up contributing to the championship teams in that way of getting possession after every goal.
That's
Uh,
cool.
because I couldn't do all the cutting that I used to do on the offense and all that sort of thing. With a leg that was taped every day from my thigh to my ankle. Um, but that
So you found
adjustment
a specialty,
I did.
right? Like, and there's a lesson here around, um, you know, being malleable. That you think it's X, the universe says, "Hey, it's Y,"
Yeah,
and then you've got to pivot there, and there are parallels in business as well. And I'd love to, I want to talk about your business, but
sure.
really, I mean, you were at the top of the food chain as the CEO of a monster company called Ketchum, which I'd love you to talk to us about. But you had a secret at this time that you were drinking yourself probably almost to death here, right? I mean,
Yeah,
t-
it was touch and go for a little bit. It's interesting. Um, when I look back on it, I was perfectly set up for uh, an alcoholic. I was a CEO of a fairly large company. I had a driver. Didn't have to worry about DUIs. I had an unlimited expense account. I had one of those unlimited Amex cards.
yeah.
I traveled around the world and whatever. Nobody asked about my expense accounts. I didn't file any expense accounts for an entire year, one year. Um, you know, was, and I was I was a stockholder in the company. I was hurting myself by not doing the right things. But, in addiction, you don't think about that much. Um, so I was really set up for that. And there were people around me, Michael, who took care of me. Um, I had senior staff, and they knew what was going on. to me. You don't hide over a quart of vodka a day. I mean, that's what it was in the last year of my drinking, 8 months to a year. And they wanted me to stay in that role because they felt their jobs depended on me being in that role. Ironically, I was still selling enormous accounts for the company. I did a couple in blackout that after I sobered up, I didn't remember doing. But I was on adrenaline, still working and still showing up and still being reasonable. And I was completely dependent on alcohol at that time. And
Every day, wake up,
every day
start the day with a drink. Is that the way it was?
started with a drink. I had a big hedge in front of my house, and when I'd come home at night, I would bring from the sports bar that I would go to a styrofoam cup with vodka in it, and I'd stick it in the hedge. So when I drove my car out by the hedge, I'd grab that and I'd go downtown. And that kept me from getting DTs when I first got to work. I have some speaking
ETs
engagements.
for folks who don't know, those are tremors that you that alcoholics get when they're detoxing, correct?
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's one of the more dangerous detoxes because very often there are all kinds of uh, things that can go haywire, if you will, in your system when you become physically dependent on alcohol because your blood has got so much in it that when you take that away, your body reacts negatively at the
Yeah.
outset, and they have to give you other drugs so that you don't, have one of those fits or whatever. I can't remember the name they call them, but it can be dangerous. But anyhow, that was, being the CEO of a company made it easier for me to continue that down that track until it didn't. And then, I got very sick one weekend and ended up, you know, on the floor and ended up with what we call a moment of clarity, where this voice said to me, "You don't have to live this way anymore. You don't." And it kept repeating it as I was waking up. My wife was in California. I was in Pittsburgh, I think. And I called a friend that I had put in rehab some years before and asked him to please come and take me to rehab.
Wow.
I put in the EAP program for the whole company, the Employee Assistance Program, years before, and then I ended up being able to take advantage of it. I offered to resign my position with the company, and the board of directors refused, uh, which was kind of amazing. They said they believed in me and they wanted me to get well. Uh, I spent a month away and came back frightened, but I came back committed to a program of sobriety. Uh,
Will you talk to me about the emotions that you felt at this time? Was it embarrassment? Did you just not care? You were so relieved that you were getting help and getting, they say in 12-step programs, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I imagine that was part of what you felt at that point. But did you feel like you let people down? What crossed your mind?
all of the above, Michael. I mean, I had been sober for 8.5 years, and then went back out for 3 years. And it was during those 3 years that my drinking accelerated to the point of writing a suicide plan, and then obviously not acting on it. But I didn't think I could get sober again, and the guilt, the fear, the the feeling of letting everyone down, not least of all yourself, uh, and then saying, "Oh, maybe I should just end this all. It'll be better," uh,
Mm,
and which is a very dark place to be in. But I've been there. I know what that place feels like. So by the time I got into rehab and I came out, I probably would have stayed in rehab another 5 months if they had let me do it
yeah.
because I was just afraid of the outside world at that point. Uh, but I ended up in a program with a good sponsor, and I did 90 meetings in 90 days, and I went to meetings around the world that I didn't speak the language, but you can find AA meetings everywhere. And
Yeah.
I would go sit in the rooms because I knew the rest of the people were trying to be sober. So was I. Uh, so yeah, all those emotions come to the front.
What alcohol is different than, I talked to you about this in my pre-interview. My drug of choice was cocaine. I was a bartender for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Not unlike yourself, I suffered from terrible panic attacks. I found out that alcohol made the panic attacks go away, at least momentarily,
Yeah.
temporarily, which was a really good thing to learn, but also maybe a terrible thing. And I'd find myself at the bar. I bartended in New York, where the bars stay open until 4 a.m. And even back then, we'd stay open until, it was the time, in the 90s, things were a lot different. I'd keep my bar open sometimes till 5:30, 6 a.m. Cops never came, nobody cared. But I'd find myself at midnight, having, started drinking that day at probably 1 p.m. when I woke up. I couldn't see straight, and discovered that cocaine allowed me to straighten up. And I found this drug that made me feel like Superman, that I was absolutely unstoppable on it. And I would use Coke until I was so wired that I needed to drink again. And I would sometimes get drunk 3 or 4 times in one night. And then, that would go on for sometimes days at a time. But I bring that story up because I wouldn't know where to find cocaine now if you paid me. I couldn't find it. I wouldn't know who sells it. And by the way, with all this stuff with fentanyl and all these horrible things, even if I was interested, which I'm not, and I get that there's, I guess I'm so far past that addiction that it's not even a thought. But I wouldn't anyway, because I'd be so terrified of what would be in it. But alcohol is so a part of the culture. Every
Yeah.
sporting event, you drive down any street in any city in this country, and there are bars, and people make it look fun, and the
Yeah.
commercials, and Peyton Manning is endorsing this beer. And like, does that make it that much harder when it's something that's so prevalent and so accepted?
Yeah, it's socially acceptable to drink. And
Yeah.
if it was against the law to drink, it would have been harder. Uh, I probably still would have found my way to do it because I have that personality. Uh,
Yeah.
I also have the I would say characteristic of never doing things halfway.
Yeah. I'm
So
the same way.
it's just I was all in. I was all in with alcohol. My athletic career actually helped that because we played hard, real hard, on and off the field,
Yeah.
and you felt like you deserved it because of what you were doing, and and Michael, you know this. If it's a rainy day, it's a great day to drink in a bar. If
Right.
it's a sunny day, you drink in the park. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. We're out on the water. If you're sad, you bury your sorrows, drown your sorrows. If you're happy, you celebrate. I mean, there's no human condition that they haven't marketed, and I was part of marketing. I know this game that they didn't market that said go buy alcohol and
Yeah.
you'll feel better. Miller Lite, whatever you name it, they're all doing it. So it's
And so is there because I think one of the I'll go to like an NFL game. I feel like there's the dirty little secret of the NFL and really all sports leagues is that folks are drinking an obscene amount of alcohol, are then getting behind the wheels of their cars. I don't know I've never seen any sort of data on crashes or fatal crashes after sporting events. And I hope that my thesis is wrong here, but I feel like there's this dirty little secret where they're pumping people full of alcohol. Certainly people have the choice. And I get when it gets to become an addiction, it no longer is a choice. But like is I feel I just it feels negligent in a lot of ways, and it's big business, and people are getting really hurt as a result. Have you ever thought about this on the macro level as being like an advocate for, or somebody who opposes just
yeah,
alcohol companies or things like that? Has that
yeah.
ever been a thought for
I,
you?
I don't actively do that, but I'm not a fan I'll just put it that way. And I talk to people about that. I talk to people in the industry about that, about what they're doing, and advertising marijuana now as well. And that's the introductory drug. And I became friends of Christopher Kennedy Lawford. It was Peter Lawford's son, part of the Rat
Yeah,
Pack, one of the
yeah,
children.
I know Peter Lawford, sure.
He took his first, did his first marijuana with his father when he was 14. Uh,
Wow.
and he gave me a book, signed his book about that, because I won an award some years back called the Johnson Foundation Award for people who were in recovery for a pretty good time and did something with their lives. And there are a lot of people who have. But anyhow, he was a real strong advocate, and I supported him against this legalizing marijuana because it's just a fact. I mean, it's an introductory drug in most families,
Wow.
and here we are. We're marketing that in much the same way today. Anyhow, I don't like that end of it. I boil it down to we have to make individual decisions, uh, and I don't think advertising made me drink, but it may have made me think my drinking was normal.
Mm,
And that's even more insidious. I think that it was, I'm just like they are. Uh, and they have
that's right.
those little blips on the end that say, please drink responsibly. Well, okay. That's sort of a throwaway. After telling me the only way I can have a great time, is to engage in alcohol. But what's interesting? There's a little bit of a backlash today. More and more places are, in fact, serving non-alcohol beer.
Yeah.
And I have a good friend that in a group that I go talk to periodically. It's not an addiction group, but another kind of group, and they serve non-alcohol wine only at the place because somebody in their family is in the program and so on. So there's some of that healthier living, that sort of thing. So
How do you feel about the non-alcoholic drinks? I have mixed feelings about those things. Years ago,
oh,
when I was trying to get off the cocaine, for me, alcohol was always the gateway to the cocaine. I never
often it is,
used
yeah,
it. Often it is. So I started drinking like O'Doul's or whatever the non-alcoholic beer was at the time, and it felt to me like harder than just abstinence. Why do a thing that kind of feels like the thing and tastes like the thing?
yeah.
And I found it to be a much harder road to go down than simply abstaining entirely. What are your thoughts on these non-alcoholic
Well,
drinks that are
I
so
don't know.
popular?
I don't. I do when I eat. I'll tell you when I have non-alcohol beer, steamed blue crabs.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in Baltimore and Maryland,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Chesapeake Bay crabs and that thing. I'll have a Heineken 00 there, and
yeah,
I can't drink a lot of it because it makes me bloated anyhow, and I don't like the way
sure.
it makes me feel in that
Yeah.
way. But there's no buzz. But washing down that hot sauce with a nice cold one really feels good.
That's cool. That's cool.
And that's
Okay.
about all I do. I don't engage in the other fake stuff. And,
Maybe you sold me on that with the blue crabs.
yeah,
What advice you, I mean, you're 26 years in here. I know that there are people listening to this show who are either struggling with addiction or people who've made a commitment recently. Some folks I know personally who've made a commitment recently to say, like, I'm giving up X thing. What do you say to folks? We've all heard the one day at a time, mantra, but what do you say to folks with 26, almost 27 years in yourself for people who are a week in or a year in?
yeah.
That
Well,
could be some advice they could glean.
yeah. Any abstinence is good from something that's doing harm.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm if somebody can only stay away from it for 6 days a week or 5 days a week, stay away from it.
Mm,
We have binge alcoholics who only they get blasted on the weekend and that sort of thing. Do I recommend that? No, but if you got 5 days sober out of seven, it's better than 7 days drunk, which is what I
mm,
had. So I'm an encourager of people to, in their own, on their own journey. Everybody's got a different journey here. Uh,
Mm,
and be conscious, I believe in journaling. Uh, Write down how you feel those 5 days, and then write down how you felt Monday morning after the weekend, and do that on a continuum and see how that feels. Or,
mm,
what happens to you on the weekend when you have that binge, as opposed to how you feel by Wednesday and Thursday without alcohol in your system. Any
mm.
differences? Try to evaluate what works and what doesn't. Uh, and I think by the time somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to give it up for 40 days," or "I'm going to give it up for whatever," they're probably either on the edge of having a problem or actually have a problem.
Mm.
Normal people, normal people seem to be okay, you uh, who will have, a couple drinks a week, um, at some celebratory thing or whatever, and they put it down. The people who would have one glass of wine with dinner I couldn't figure that out. That wasn't
Me either.
wasn't me. I never did that. When my wife, God bless her, was with me in my bad times, still with me 40 years. And she, when I quit drinking, I remember we went out to dinner, and we were in a restaurant, and she would always order a wine or something. She didn't order any wine. And we had the conversation. And I said, "You don't have to do that for me because this is my program." And she said, "Bob, I never liked drinking, but I wanted to be with you." So
Excuse
that's
me.
how she could stand me, probably. Uh, and I said, "Well, you used to order a martini now and then." She said, "Yeah, but you finished every one that I ordered." Yeah, a little lesson there.
That is a good lesson there. That is a good lesson. Yeah, I have a close friend of mine who was like, yeah, I haven't. This was in December. We were doing this running program in December, and he said, like, I can't remember the last time I had a drink. And he's like, I think it was like September. I think I had like a half a glass of wine in September. And I remember thinking, like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard
Yeah,
because the way I'm wired, it's 12 beers. It's 12 beers and Jack Daniels, and
right,
there's
right.
no moderation. Why would we
Yeah, if
not?
one feels that good, how about six?
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And so there are people
Yeah.
who just are wired differently.
So that recovery thing though has made me able to do some extraordinary things in my business and in
Yeah, tell us.
other parts of my life that I would never have been present to do. Uh, so I'm grateful, every day I'm grateful for that moment when I made that decision.
Yeah, well, tell us a little more, and we'll get you out of here on this. But tell us about what you're actually doing now and some of the work you're doing with nonprofits.
Sure.
And I imagine this is stuff that was born out of me. You said you started this company when you were 65, right? It was like I believe was like a retirement project or something like that,
It was a
right?
retirement failure. I didn't make it as retirement, and
Yeah.
we had my wife and I had gone abroad for a good while, a couple, almost 2 months, and I came back. And she knew I was bored to death, and so I decided. I said, I got to do something here. So I called a couple friends in New York and just chit chatted about what I was thinking about doing, and everybody said go for it. And so I put together a little bit of money, threw it in the bank account, and started a company that would do consulting in the charitable area. Um, and because of my other history, my name was associated with a brand that was already out there. So I started getting a lot of phone calls. I made it known in my circles that I was available. So the phone started ringing a bit, and I had already been involved as a trustee or board member at a number of nonprofits, so I knew that network pretty well. And things got really busy right away. I started with like 2 clients, and after the first year, I had like 10. And I was renting people from the old New York company from Ketchum to do some of the work. So I was sort of leasing people, and created this model horizontal model. When I was working with Omnicom, in New York, with Joan Ketchum, uh, I was on their acquisition committee. So I went around the country for a few years with a half a dozen other people, and we evaluated companies for them to buy or not buy. So I got to see a lot of business models by doing that. And I saw this horizontal model that a company in Dallas had. And I thought, yeah, that's really cool. You don't need a whole lot of capital to get it started. Uh, our consultants are all 990s, they're not employees. We have a fixed number of people, 7 or 8 people who really run the company. We outsource everything. And one of the frustrations at the large company, which was a vertical company, not horizontal, because we had a lot of boxes making your way to the top, was I could never pay the best people who did the consulting enough money. Uh, Occasionally you could bonus out and do things like that, but I was paying for a lot of infrastructure that I felt was no longer needed in business today. So I created a different kind of company. It got busy, and I ended up calling somebody from Ketchum that I had mentored, who was a senior vice president, and I said, I'm offering you 20% of the company to jump ship and take this over. He's 20 years younger than I was at the time. And within 4 months, he was on board, and we were growing at over the years. In the first 10 years, we grew at like 15 to 20% a year.
Wow.
And it's turned into a brand in the industry. We're a large to medium-sized company in the field, which is a very small space, actually, concentrating in nonprofit consulting. Um, and because of my international work over the years, we've ended up working in a total of 17 countries, raising money in those countries, uh, and sort of making connections with people all around the world. Um, and what we do is we contract with a charity to estimate how much money they can raise. And this is high-end fundraising. This isn't direct mail or any of those kinds of things or direct response. This is what we call transfer of wealth, major gift fundraising. Uh, the campaigns that we do range from 5 million to the largest recent one is 1.5 billion.
Wow.
And it's big projects mostly. I made an intentional decision to not have a company that had to train fundraisers, but we hired, you had to have a minimum of 15 years experience before we would consider you. And we average 21 years now in the industry with our staff.
Wow.
Um, so the great thing about it, Michael, is we sleep really well. All of our clients are all over the world doing great things, whether it's in healthcare, education, humanitarian causes all over the globe. Um, there are 21 top humanitarian agencies around the world, and we're working currently with 6 of them, 6 of the 21, which
Wow.
are the largest agencies in that space. And it's and I talk about this all the time. If you chase money as your objective, it's a hollow chase. If you
Yeah.
chase values, the money chases you.
Mm.
And this company is successful because we're built on high integrity, and our philosophy is to make the world a more benevolent place.
Mm.
That's why we get up in the morning. Um, and frankly, I don't worry about the money. I worry about what the work we do. Um, People talk to me about pricing, and I said, we price our business to do the work, not to get the work. Uh,
Mm.
and so I've ended up being a fairly high-end company, and we get invited to a lot of really big shows and big opportunities to do things. We're doing some work in Jordan now with one charity. We're about to do some work with another one to possibly build an aquarium on the Red Sea, and
So cool.
a marine park on the Red Sea. And it's lots of fun. National Geographic is a past client, and we enter into the life of an agency when they either have a great opportunity or they're in real trouble, and they
Got it.
need outside advice. So I don't know if that's a good description of what I do, but in that I still sell a few things. I get a lot of phone calls every week,
Yeah.
and I answer my own phone. You know, I have an assistant. I live in Sarasota, Florida. She lives in Philly. You've met her, Erin. She runs my life on a
Yeah.
schedule, which is really the way I can do that. The other side of my life is I'm a volunteer. Um, I'm, I helped create, and I'm now a founding member of the board of the WHO Foundation in Geneva, Switzerland. We got a lot of press during COVID, of course, not all positive, but we
Sure.
raised a couple $100 million after we were created in the first 2.5 years. Um, I chair the National Aquarium Board. I'm still on the board as chair emeritus in Baltimore, and a couple other boards, International Association of Fundraising Professionals International, and did some lobbying for the nonprofit space while I was doing that. So I try to, it's funny, sometimes I'm in a boardroom and I don't know whether I'm on the board or I'm consulting. I just have to look around and, okay, which boardroom is this that I'm in
Got
today?
it.
Uh,
And that's I mean, it's a perfect segue because it's not because you're doing what you were doing 27 years ago. It's because you're clear of that and you're doing so much great impactful work that you're sometimes looking around and saying, which amazing space am I in
my,
right now? What an incredible story, Bob, truly. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your story of triumph here, you know, blemishes and all, but then where you've come from and come to. And just for the, you know, the show's called the Inspiration Accelerator for a reason, that there are people right now listening to this who are thinking, I've got to change my life. And, you know, Bob did it and other people have done it. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story, man. Truly.
thanks so much. I've been blessed, and I figured God must have rejected me a couple times because I should have died along the way, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm here to do something. I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. So
Bob, I love it. Well, we want you to do it as long
thanks.
as you can. How can folks, if folks want to look you up, how can they find you? LinkedIn or something like that?
Yeah. LinkedIn is probably one of the easier ways. LinkedIn is Bob Carter, CFRE. That's
Okay.
Certified Fundraising Executive, but CFRE is the letters there. And we have a website called Carter.global. And
Carter.global.
yeah, we're on that.
Folks, check out Bob. Reach out on LinkedIn. Just Bob, truly, you're an incredible human, man, and I'm so thankful you took an hour of your time to talk to our audience, man. I
Thanks so
appreciate
much.
it.
I enjoyed
Uh,
it.
Well, folks, for Bob and everybody at the Inspiration Accelerator, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Cheers. Have a great night. Bye.